right, back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center with our good friends from Deepwater Wind. Mr. Innovation, Saul Kaplan is here. We're less than a month away from BIF.
The sun's still shining today in your windows.
Absolutely.
How did you make it through the eclipse okay?
We did. Molly and Kate were outside with their...
Saw the pictures.
Yes, and people were coming over to mooch their glasses off them. I think that's the right technical term.
We had one
mooch.
pair of glasses, and
But
we were all outside in the courtyard passing the glasses.
And you had
around.
boxes
And a
on
couple
your
of
head?
boxes, no, a couple of boxes, but that wasn't quite as good, like the box, looking at it through the boxes. You saw this little sliver of reflection there. The glasses were cool.
Yeah.
Like that's great.
I don't know, though, that I've seen so much for so little.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Right? But you gotta love anything with a hashtag totality.
Yeah, right.
This is a good thing.
Let's start with the tech papers were aflutter this morning that Jeff Immelt was going to go take over Uber. Here's a guy who was probably at your most basic mainstream company, the worst performing, I think, S&P 500 stock in 2017. Some corporate investors pushed him out the door at GE, and here's Uber, the very definition of disruption and innovation and freneticness. How is that a match in your world?
Let's compare and contrast the two. Let's put this in perspective, right? First of all, I don't know anybody who, when they think of GE, and what GE has stood for, and let's put it in perspective. The scale of GE:
330,000.
330,000 employees. What, 120 billion? A conglomerate made up of 100 different groups.
Business units.
And the change that GE is going through and has had to go through, and how Jeff Immelt has tried to position this Queen Mary, this huge behemoth, for transformation, to feel like a $120 billion company, and make it feel entrepreneurial again, and make it go from an industrial company to a digital company, right? So I don't know anyone who thinks about Jeff Immelt as kind of a slacker when it comes to leadership of a large enterprise. Uber, on the other hand, hot, new, rapidly growing company. What are we talking about there? It's hard to get at their numbers, and to know whether we're talking about the gross. But they have not made any money, although there's some rumor that maybe they could be in a position to actually have a profit this year. But it's rapidly growing. There's no question about that. It's probably going to be 12, 15 billion. Right, compared to 120 billion. The number of employees at Uber, depending on whether you count the drivers, which aren't really employees.
You can't count the drivers.
Then what are we talking about here? Like 10, 12,000 maybe employees. So Uber needs an adult. Right, Uber needs somebody who can help them scale and create a real growth enterprise. And Jeff Immelt has clearly demonstrated that he can do that with one of the largest, most successful enterprises. The fact that GE's stock price didn't do well last year, I'm sorry, try to change the Queen Mary. What he's tried to the direction of this big ship, right? And I think he's put them in that direction. I mean, we start to see GE got rid of some old businesses, doubled down on some new businesses, repositioned itself digitally. So I think my answer to your question is I understand why Uber would look at a Jeff Immelt.
So you're pro Jeff Immelt?
I am pro Jeff Immelt being able to take an enterprise that desperately needs adult supervision, right, and know-how in terms of how to scale, and putting it in the hands. And believe me, Jeff Immelt will know what it means to grow that company, to figure out when to turn a profit, and how to manage what will ultimately be an IPO. Right, this is where we're headed. I don't know what year it's going to happen and when the conditions are going to be right for it.
Or when the lawsuits will be resolved.
I wouldn't bet against Jeff Immelt being able to create enormous shareholder value.
The company, I'll stick with Uber for a second, a lot of lawsuits looking to be piled up between board and former CEO and different aspects of the finance structure of the entity.
Well, it's the most, it's like, to use my bad analogy, to continue it here, I don't know of any more significant, incredible growth opportunity that was behaving as if it was a shipwreck. Right? Just a disaster, in terms of managing the personnel issues, knowing how to scale this thing, right? It desperately needs, whether it's Jeff Immelt or someone else, it needs a serious adult that understands how to scale a large enterprise.
Let's go over to GE, Berkshire Hathaway. Sold its interest in the company, significant, I think 2.9%, did not do much for the stock. Warren Buffett's not wrong too often, I think's the history. Stephen Pryor was here. He poo-pooed that it would have any implication, that anything would have any implication on their job growth here in Rhode Island. And your thoughts on that?
On what, on the GE side of that?
Yeah, on the GE.
Well, on the GE side of that, I mean, first of all, what they're doing here is so small in the grand scheme of things, relative to what GE's trying to do, right? And so I really don't think it's going to affect what their plans are or aren't here.
Yeah.
What's going to dictate their plans here is whether they can get at the digital talent.
Yeah.
That it's a pocket of digital talent and a reasonably small one.
Yeah.
And whether it can feed the enterprise-wide needs for digital talent, in their enterprise. And so if we can position ourselves to help them access and bring that talent in, GE will find plenty of places for that talent to work and projects for it to work on, around the country and around the world. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about what the implications are here, unless we have trouble creating access to digital talent.
So one of the other things that you and I have talked about, I think it was the topic du jour of the day, or some of these incentives. Are we incenting the wrong thing? I had emailed over to you earlier today. Should, instead of $30 million a year and $14 million a year, Wexford $100 million, should we be incenting 1,000 little things? Should we be incenting, or should we, Gary Sass says, hey, when you pick winners and losers, watch out, because
the argument, me, I'm always gonna go down the middle on this one, because I think that I
You're
understand.
Goldilocksing this.
No, I understand. It's not like I'm not shy about a point of view on this. But look, if I had to choose one thing, I would choose overall business climate and lowering tax rates, and getting our spending in line. That affects the climate for everybody, not just a few. But I like that we have some incentive dollars, which give us the tools to be able to close a deal, right? Not initiate the deal, because we'll never be able to out-incent larger players, but to be able to close a deal as a catalyst. What you can't do is bake in incentives to the model, because we'll never win that game, and we'll never be able to sustain it. That's a poor investment. But yes, there should be some resources available to incent the closing of a deal that then changes the trajectory of the local economy. I think it remains to be seen whether the use of this big bucket of incentive dollars that we've trusted the Commerce Corporation with and the government, I think it's too early to know whether that's going to pay off and be the kind of catalyst that we want. I think that they made investments that were focused on an innovation and entrepreneurship economy, like a GE, and so I like that aspect of it. I like the repurposing of the 195 land with a message around innovation and higher wage jobs. I think that's right? Let's see whether the incentive dollars actually create the kind of benefit. It takes a while for that to happen. It never happens overnight.
No.
And we'll have to see. I do know one thing: there's no way we can continue to invest at that level of incentives.
No.
So it better have been a catalyst to make something different happen.
And don't we really need to make them happen? Listen, there are always recessions. There's always downturns, as much as we hope that recoveries will last on infinita. But at some point, you're going to see some cooling of markets. And
Nostradamus, you're predicting that there's going to be a downturn at some point in the future. Of course there is.
And we're moving slow. Some of these projects are taking a very long time. I mean, 195 started under it's a 10-year-old project. It's 2 governors ago.
Oh, I remember that. I remember putting in some of the early work to try to get that organized, knowing full well that it would be 2 governors later by the time it actually happened. So of course the current administration is going to take credit for
Right.
it. But the truth is, it happened over a long period of time. It's like putting in the wind turbines off the coast. The seeds were planted for that. The
Right.
infrastructure was put in place several administrations ago. This has been my point for a while. This stuff doesn't happen in 4-year cycles.
Right.
That stuff happens in 10, 20-year cycles, and we've got to change the game. I think the problem is we're the first one in and the last one out of every cycle.
Yeah.
So it's not whether we can predict that there's going to be another downturn. Of course there's going to be another downturn.
Yeah.
The question is, are we still stuck with all these low-wage service jobs that get wiped out in the downturn? Or can we create more resilience in our economy with higher wage jobs and people that are on job ladders that can move up to be able to support the higher cost of living here in the Northeast? That's what we should be doing, and it remains to be seen whether the actions being taken today will create those set of conditions when the inevitable downturn starts to happen. That's where the real measurement happens. Being able to claim that the unemployment rate came down, and now we're at full employment again, isn't because of what's happening today.
No.
It's because of what happened previously that resulted in this. What you would do today is going to be seen in the next cycle, in the not the next election cycle, maybe 2 election cycles from now.
Well,
and
as Gary said, a third, I think, I don't want to butcher his math, but a third of the job recovery are jobs under $45,000.
Yeah. No,
So-
we have a lower wage, more service-dominated economy, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs. They're great entry-level jobs. They get people into the workforce. I love that I think we're at full employment.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. It means everyone who's looking for work can find work. The question is, are they underemployed? Are they able to get into a job with a progression to higher wage opportunities, or are they stuck in a lower wage place where even one job can't create the resources necessary to support a family?
BIF, we're about 3.5 weeks
Yeah,
away.
right, we're in the countdown.
We had an amazing string of just tremendously talented people Skyping in, coming on in. We had Joe Andrews.
You had him in the studio.
We
I
had
saw
him,
Joe.
and his son came in.
Yeah. How good is Joe? He's such a
he's
special. I mean, not just because I'm a huge Patriots fan, and anybody who has 3 Super Bowl rings, and I get a chance to know personally.
Yeah, right.
Like, how cool is that? Like, he's the only one like that I know, right? But the truth is, he's such a genuine. He's a mensch. His story, what he's been through personally, and his family has been through. You want to support him. You want to help him, and we do.
Yeah.
And we do. And I can't wait for him to share it, on the BIF stage in a few weeks. And I thought he did really well.
Yeah, he did great.
I thought he did really well here.
And we had Walt Mossberg on,
Yeah.
sort of the god of technology journalism. I mean, I don't know that there's anybody more influential. And it was interesting. The great thing about digital is you see how things move and who reads what, and then 2 days later, 3 other major influencers share that piece. And then the traffic goes boom again.
Yeah.
And that piece has gone and gone and gone. It's 10 days ago, and that thing's probably in our top 5 every day of top 5 read stories, because it's still flying around the world of technology in the U.S.
Well, who has a perspective like Walt Mossberg?
Right.
I've had a ringside seat, during the early days.
More than a
of
ringside seat. They were coming and bowing down to him, and to some degree kissing the ring.
Well, he had access, and he helped tell the story. And as the part I most love about other than the Rhode Island connection, which is cool,
right.
The part I most love about Walt and what he represents is his claim to fame was to tell the story through the lens, not of the tech titans,
that's right.
but through the lens of the consumer.
100%.
Those of us that have lived with this technology, both the frustrations and the excitement of having new tools, and things that improve our life. I asked him, and I know when he's on the BIF Summit stage. I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about, with all of this new technology we have, has it improved the world? Has it made it a better place? And he makes a compelling argument on one side, saying there's no question, it enabled the democratization and access to information and tools that we never had before, which is unleashed incredible economic and personal value. But on the other side, I think he agrees with me to say, like, we've got a lot more to do for all this technology that we have. Why is it that our poverty rates, our education attainment rates, our healthcare system can't, one person can't talk to another, when we're swimming in tools and technology to be able to fix it? And what you realize is it's not the technology that's getting in the way, it's a human problem, and it's the stubborn organizations we're in and the stubborn systems that we've built and folks that are trying to protect them and not creating the space or conditions for us to say what's next. And that's what we do at the BIF Summit. We have a group, Trinity Rep will be full of over 500 what I call innovation junkies, all optimistically trying to figure out how could we collaborate to be proactive to shape what's next that would improve all of our lives, using the technology, harnessing that technology, recognizing that we have to make money, so it's not like the capitalism side of it doesn't come into play. If you can't capture the value from your new ideas, it isn't going to scale and it isn't going to change the world.
Right. And listen, BIF as an organization works in some of the more challenging industries like healthcare. I mean, the difficulty of communicating within the healthcare sphere as a consumer is almost, it takes incredible patience and incredible skills to be able to maneuver one's own healthcare, let alone systems or anything else, and we see it in Rhode Island right now.
I'm pretty sure today, one of my favorite days is when we sit at BIF, and now we have all 32 storytellers, the speaker slots at the 2 days of the summit. So today we actually sat there and played the Rubik's Cube game of how are we grouping them, who's going to go first, second, all the way through to the end of the second day. And I'm not looking to put people that have similar stories together. I'm looking for the most eclectic, diverse pairings, so that you scratch your head and say, why is this important, and force you to think about it, right? And so that's what we do at the summit. I'm pretty sure we're going to lead off with a dear friend of mine, Len Schlesinger. He was the president of Babson College, and now he's at Harvard as one of the famous B School professors there. And his story is going to have nothing to do with business or entrepreneurship. He's going to tell the personal story of navigating the healthcare system on behalf of himself and a mom who was ill. You're going to be blown away when you hear Len Schlesinger, who's one of the smartest guys I know on the planet, share the story through the lens
of the consumer,
of the family and the family caregiver, and you sit back and say, this is why we need to innovate in healthcare.
Well, think about it. He had every advantage in the world, right?
Yeah, he did.
Smart, wealthy, connections.
Right.
You name it, he could call up and get a hospital president like that, and it still is about as
his story is amazing, and you're right, and he has enough privilege to be able to access things that a lot of people can't, and it's still the most complicated thing to navigate as a consumer, as a patient, as someone who's got a family member who desperately needs access to that care, something that intuitively should be simple, that should be easier to do with all of the tools and technology that we have today.
Absolutely.
We've made it incredibly hard, and it's not the technology that's getting in the way, it's the stubborn system that doesn't know how to explore, test what's next.
Well, listen, on that bright and shiny moment, I want to thank you as always, Mr. Innovation. I think we covered